Welcome, everybody. I'm Alyssum from Awaken Authenticity, and this is my friend Jeffrey Tomasetti. And I am delighted to have this conversation with him, with you today, because I met him when I was 10 years old, living on a sailboat in the Bahamas, and he was 30 years old, living on a sailboat in the Bahamas. And Jeff had a doll, and as a 10-year-old, I also had dolls and stuffed animals. And so my sister and I and other children on other boats, and Jeff would hang out and play with our dolls, do a lot of pretending. And he was just one of those awesome adults when you're a kid. Like the kid, he's the adult that could easily play with the kids and also with the adults. And so it's really cool after all this time. We just recently reconnected back on Facebook, and so it's a delight to re-welcome him into my life and to share his story with you all. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you. It's been a nice. We both probably have had a really good run since then, but those were some marvelous times in the Bahamas. I still have K Delta. She is a Cabbage Patch doll with an "I Love the Bahamas" T-shirt on. She doesn't really wear much other than that all the time. She's kind of a free spirit, and she's doing well. A few stains, but otherwise she's doing real well.
Good.
And let's go.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you first of all. I know that since we're gonna just dive really in deep here. One of the things I heard about that I was very sad to hear about since I last saw you is that you both got married and then dealt with the passing of your wife. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that experience and how that has affected you.
The experience was shattering, and it was horrible. I had been with Susan since she was 21 and I was about 25. And she passed away when she was 43.
Wow.
We weren't married all of that time, but we were married a good bit of that time. And I was one of the lucky ones, or as peers in this society, I was lucky because she rocked for me. We did everything together and had pretty consistent goals, and we were happy. We were happy. We were working hard at the time to build the nest that we wanted, a home, and maybe investing just a little too much energy into it. But it was that we kind of saw it as that point in our lives. And so when she passed away in about a year, and it was just one of those just brutal cancer struggles, the one that first day we were mountain biking and she had some pain, and she's a physical therapist, so she knew the ins and outs of the system. So she said, "No, let's go to the hospital, to the emergency room on Sunday, because it'll take me forever to get an intake otherwise." I'm like, "Oh, sounds like a good plan." Went to the emergency room on Sunday with just some pain in her abdomen. Could have been appendicitis, who knows? And we just went to the hospital. They operated that night, and the next morning, her colon the blockage in her colon had been removed, and we sat down right with the doctor, who said it's all through her colon and also her liver, and you are not going to survive. And then we went for that, like, for a year. Wow. And all the usual ramifications of that, the chemo, the radiation, the multiple trips to the hospital. And then about this time of the year, she passed away actually between Christmas and New Year's. And so I didn't ever say, I didn't whine and complain when I was with her. I knew what I had.
Yeah.
But it really was just like, oh. And so at that time, all of a sudden I'm in a 4,500 square foot house on the river, all the way we wanted it. She got to live in it for like 4 months. It got finished during the cancer time. Yeah. And so now I'm in do have certain guy tendencies, like I'm not, wasn't the decorator and that kind of thing. So now I've got this empty, huge home and also a full law practice and really no reason to have it all. I mean, no serious reason. So it did tell, I mean, it's a cliche, but tomorrow's promised to nobody. What do you want to really do with your time?
Right.
I hadn't really strayed far from the path that I'd been on, which was adventuring and outdoor stuff and some creative stuff. But since then I've doubled down over the last 10 years.
Yeah. And do you think that that's, how connected in your mind is it that not having Susan around and having a life full again of adventuring and outdoors activities? Like, is it something where you jump into that because you're trying to, like, what was I doing? Like, I love Susan. Our house was something that we were doing together, but really what I care about is this other stuff. Or is it more like, I want to make sure that I'm living life to the fullest the way that I was with Susan, and there's no point in dwelling on what I don't have anymore, or some combination of both? How does that fit in your head?
I would say of the two of us, I was the more adventurous and probably almost borderline, like yourself, crazy creative. And although somehow I had this idea that not to quit my day job, and also, and so I had these artistic ideas and some of the travel techniques that I use or I'm developing are also, to me, like a moving story. It's not just it's not like really traditional sign up for the 5K race or this event over here. It's things that are being developed by me. And she was a little less interested, not as interested in all of that. And she was particularly not interested in like really kind of out there concepts. So I was compromising. When you're another person, you're not able to do all the things. So I actually know it was kind of like once, and it took a long time. I mean, once the shock wore off, which was years, but things came gradually. And then all of a sudden it was like, it is like the doors open. It's like, oh, I can do that and I can do this. So one of the main things I'm doing is, and I started it almost immediately. I was collecting abstract art and also studying it just for studying it because I wanted to study abstract art. Stuff like Chagall is one of my favorites. And things like your mother's doing. I liked Oriental concepts. And I was buying art. So I said, why am I buying art? So one day it was like in 2007, I said, I just ran down to Walmart and bought paint and bought some paper and some canvases. And I've done hundreds of artwork since then.
And tell me about how, were you a painter before 2007? Was that something you had dabbled in and got back to, or is that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, the fun I had with it, so I'm in a trade, this profession, this exacting profession of law where things have to be pretty well tightened down.
Defined.
In spite of what you see on TV or people waving their hands around, there's real lawyers that have to get everything like just right.
Yeah.
And that's what I spent my career doing. Well, so I made all these little reverse rules for the artwork. So I've had no training in graphic art whatsoever. I refuse to use a straight edge. I don't look at anything and copy it. And at the beginning, it was all on upcycled, it's almost all on upcycled materials. So I go to garage sales and flea markets and buy big old canvases and just paint and add texture like right over the top of someone else's work, or cover it up entirely actually.
Yeah.
But I usually don't start with new things, and I start with no high-end art supplies, just whatever was at a Lowe's or just paint stores, old, and that's how I've continued. So it's more of, I really don't, I want to just to hear myself. I just want it to come without a lot of outside influence on what I'm doing.
Yeah. So two things that I want to ask you about that. So the impetus to use old canvases, is that something? Why is that what you settled on as your material?
Some of it's pragmatic, and some of it's I can honestly, at the very beginning, I was afraid of calling myself an artist or a real, like a true like member of some artistic community. So I didn't want to waste perfectly new canvases on what I was doing. So there's a piece of that where this stuff is all, everything I'm using has very low cost, and I'm just doing it for myself, and I don't want to, you know, we all know the person that gets into a hobby or a sport or something, the first thing they do is go out and buy the most expensive version of whatever it is.
Yeah. So it's sort of like an opportunity to lower the expectations for yourself so that you don't feel like you have to fake it till you make it, sort of thing. There's no expectation if you're not even using virgin materials.
Right.
Interesting.
And so I've done I've done a few shows, and even at the shows, the work is not for sale. Because I just don't want to tie it to that. I've tied a lot of my life of being for sale. I don't want to. So that anyway, it's been great. I'm all excited about it. There's always something in process. There's been some really cool results, and that was from. That's why I say it was from zero.
Yeah. And so
Just
the other
zero.
thing that I want to ask you is how has that process, what have you learned about yourself through that process? And were those things, well, let's start with that. What have you learned about yourself? Or about the world? What have you learned?
I've learned that one of the things I've learned is when you're painting or you're producing something, you shouldn't make any attempt to reproduce your idea of what things are, because for one thing, if let's say you paint a horse, okay, and someone walks down the hallway and they go, "Oh, a horse," they never saw your horse. As soon as they labeled it as a horse, they're done. Yeah. And I'm done too. So my things tend to be enigmatic things. Some days they're a horse, some days they're a tree, or whatever. They're what you see in it that day. And so one of the things that surprised me the most is the artwork that I did 5 or 6 years ago. I continue to walk up to and go, "Wow, that's great. You're pretty good. You're a pretty good artist." Actually, I like my work. I think that's the biggest surprise.
That's awesome. Congrats. Yeah.
So I won that. I won the artwork thing.
That's awesome. So like one of the things that I'm hoping that some of my clients will do is break free of their own expectations of what they should and shouldn't do, and just sort of feel the calling and sort of like listen to whatever innate sensibility they have about how they want to express themselves, even if they don't feel like they're particularly creative. I feel like there's so many ways to express ourselves, and I love that story. I love your story because it just shows how you can go from zero training to winning.
Winning, it's winning. As long as you define what winning is, you can win.
That's
and
awesome.
a lot of my day now goes that way. Like as you know, I mean, there's on a simpler matter is that there's now a generation of people that like coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can really make coffee like a good part of your life. Like, and you can win at it. You can win at it. And you're like, oh, I'm gonna.
Your expression can be making a good pot of coffee or a cup of coffee.
Yeah. And then some other things that came along later. A lot of them are trendy in our world right now. But I'm doing yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Never had done yoga before. You just go in, got a bunch of ladies around, do this, do that. So I'm doing that. And this year, my girlfriend and I, she got me started weight training, which I do highly recommend, by the way.
Awesome.
And I'm not like, I'm like in this room, and these guys are all, big guys, and they're all, and she's taking us right to the, those things with the bars and the weight on the end. And this, again, it's a totally foreign environment. Just go in. And what I try to do when I do these things, the artwork's maybe a little exception, but I do try to, if there's something that's got a set way of doing it, like rowing, I'm rowing too, or yoga or weightlifting, I really do try to honestly do the thing.
Mm-hmm. Take in the technique.
Yeah, if it's yoga is good. If it's important to try to achieve a certain position, I try it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so what can you say about beginner's mind? I mean, you are somebody who is courageous in that way. I mean, I'm sure that even though you're courageous, it's not like you're without doubt or without fear. So talk about that transition into doing something that you've never done before and doing it. What is that section of experience like for you?
I have to say, that's a tough question. I guess the main thing is most of this stuff, I try to go and do things that I have to say that I just say, I don't say that I'm going to be bad at it, but I don't have a goal of the highest mountain or the guru in yoga. I don't joke around about it, but I actually keep my humility. That's how I do it.
Humility, and I like that a lot. Focusing on the humility as a way to bridge the gap between being fearful about something and enjoying it ultimately.
In fact, there's a good example. So if you're the person that's had no art training, that means that no one's expecting that you're gonna be a winner of that. Or, what I'm saying? You didn't go to art school and then have your parents saying, what the heck are you doing? Right. And then there's the same with when you're a male in yoga. It's like, it's okay. Just do your best.
Yeah.
And now I'm like the skinny guy in the gym. So it tends to repeat itself.
Talk more about the things that you're more in the realm of being the person who's really good at it. Like, you are a sailor, you're a long distance bike touring person. Mm-hmm. What else? Tell us about how those experiences are similar or different to the things that you're maybe not the normal person that you might see in the weight training studio.
Right. And I'll just take the lawyering and sit it on a shelf. The long distance travel by bike, which is basically like it's like backpacking.
Mhm.
I have the ability to stay on task. That's the biggest trick with all the long stuff. You have to decide in advance, honestly, what you are trying to achieve, and you have to make a commitment to that.
Yes.
And that could be a lot of things: piano, weight loss, or riding your bike from Canada to Mexico. And the Canada Mexico is a race. Well, a lot of these are races. They have rules. The main rule, though, is do it all yourself.
Mhm.
You can't have friends, family, cars helping you. You can go to stores and things, but you have to, kind of like with the long distance sailing, you have to go from one harbor to the next yourself and resupply yourself and keep going and keep track of where you are and fix everything. So I had all the sailing background, so I've really just transferred it over to this bike pack racing. But the main thing with the bike pack racing is the days are really long. They're like 18-hour days on the bicycle. And you have to, and you, like any athletic endeavor, you have, your body is the engine, and you have to understand where your red line is, how how can you keep that constant effort, like kayaking or rowing, for hours on end, and then here's what happens. So what happens is there's this little voice, and it lives inside of all of us. And the little voice that it says one of two things. One is, you're inferior and you cannot do this, so we need to find a graceful way to quit.
Yeah.
That's the little voice.
Yeah.
The second little voice is, it hurts. It's not fun. And therefore, we need to find a way to quit gracefully. So you got these two little guys inside of you, and somehow you've got to, and then these are, numerous examples, but it's raining, it's 2 a.m. For some reason, you haven't come off the mountain. You have to keep going. There is no choice. And somehow you have to make a commitment to stick with it.
Yeah.
So.
I really identify with that. Whenever I'm talking about the kayak journey I took down the Mississippi, I feel like, I was accidentally the second woman to ever paddle solo down the whole Mississippi River.
Excellent.
It's bizarre to me because it was really easy in one way. It was easy in that I had never kayaked in my life, and that was the first trip I took, and I did it.
Right.
It's not easy in the fact that it's really uncomfortable. There's tons of bugs. There's a ton of mud. Every day I felt like I'd been run over by a truck, but I still just got up and I did it. And in fact, like what you were saying at the very beginning about how when you endeavor to do these things, the first thing that you need to do is decide that you're going to do it. And once you've made that decision, the rest becomes almost really easy. I named my expedition Paddle On for a reason, because I knew I was going to have those little guys talking to my brain, and I knew that if I named the expedition Paddle On, that I was just going to be able to have all my friends and even my inner other self and my support system just say to me, paddle on, like, yes, it hurts. Yes, you don't feel great today. Paddle on.
Absolutely.
And that's how you get all the way down. I mean, that it sometimes is just a matter of making that decision that you're just gonna frickin' do it.
Yeah, and I try to talk to people about that decision, and I think it's easy to say it. It's also like a commitment to a person.
Mm-hmm.
It's when it's the level of sincerity of that decision. Mm-hmm. It's got to be real, and it's like hard to. You can talk about that with other people, but do they really get what you're saying? It's like, so when I got up in the morning, and it was so similar to your trip, because whenever I was awake or whatever, whenever I had a thought, I was thinking about Mexico. I'd be up in Montana. I was thinking about Mexico, how I was getting there. It's like constant reinforcement to that kind of a goal.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, it's good to have good goals. It would be really bad to make a commitment to something that's, I don't know, hurts you, or isn't, like you said, isn't who you really are. It's just because the reason a lot of people fail these big events is because the reason they're doing it isn't the reason. It's, wouldn't it be cool if I could show everybody on Facebook that I did this or whatever.
Right.
So now my girlfriend and I are doing big stuff on our tandem bike, where we have nothing we can, like, we have no trophy or this or did that. And a lot of it now we're just doing it because we're past the point of needing
validation.
Yeah.
That's great. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about commitment. And I really like the idea of both making commitments to yourself to accomplish certain long-term or short-term goals, but then also the idea of committing to or with another person in a partnership.
Yeah.
As someone who has never been married myself, I don't know what I've been in long-term relationships, and I feel like they've been long-term committed relationships, but I feel like there's probably another level there that I haven't experienced that I'm curious about your perspective on. Whatever you have to say about that.
Yeah. I'm going to call it good fortune. I want to say that I feel, oh no, actually it's a selection process, but it's not all good fortune. I would say that that you do have to choose well, my friend. Mm-hmm. But once you've made the choice, and the person that you've chosen to be with, if you really know that they have a good heart, that they truly are a kind person, you know, they don't pull cat's tails or I don't know. You haven't ever seen them, like, you're pretty confident that they are decent person, then I think that you really have to go down to that next level and say, one of my long-term journeys is this person. And it's old school. It sounds like marriage vows or something. But my current girlfriend and I, that doesn't sound good. But my girlfriend and we probably won't get married, but I am 1,000% in.
I think that's what it comes down to, is that both parties are in.
Yeah. And then it's already got its challenges. She's got vision problems. She's almost blind, actually.
Wow.
And was unable to, she was an archaeologist and a field scientist. And last year she was just unable to continue. And yeah.
That's devastating.
Yeah. So we are building some of these parameters of my life are building around that limitation, to the extent, and trying to eliminate it as a limitation to the extent we can. Yeah. But it's cool.
Thank goodness for tandem bikes.
See, now you figured that out, didn't you? She was an awesome mountain biker on her own. That's how I originally knew of her. And she can no longer mountain bike on trails. She was also a long distance trail runner 9 times. She did full Ironman. Wow. This is getting removed. Her vision is starting to try to take that away from her. So we're getting right back out there on the tandem bike and fighting it out there on the road. We were in Europe for two different trips over 3 months this summer.
Yeah.
And spring, and we did like 3,000 miles of dirt, 40 nights out camping, and all of that has to be worked around the fact that she can't tell the difference between the salt and the pepper, or she can look at a lot of things and not know what she's looking at.
Yeah, so for me, paddling the river, one of my favorite things Well, two things. So I got really good at paddling at night, and paddling at
Yeah,
night, um, I was doing it because the wind was too great in the opposite direction during the day, and there were days
absolutely.
paddling my heart out and being blown backwards despite the current going one way. The wind was that much greater the other way, and so I
Hmm.
realized that the wind stops at night, or at least it slows way down, and I could actually make some good headway at night. So I started paddling at night, and my friend Leanne and I that I paddled with, she and I would paddle at night, and we would wear little headlights so that other people could see us, but
Yeah,
that didn't help to actually hide. We couldn't use the light to see anything, so it was completely dark, and
right.
we ended up navigating by sound, which is a really interesting thing to experience. You know, you
Hmm.
hear the dikes, you hear the buoys, you hear the rocks and the trees all in different ways, and you're able to kind of navigate even whirlpools by sound, which is
Yeah.
really kind of interesting. That's something I never would have thought of. On the so there's that. There's like there are things when you can't see that you start using other senses, that is pretty cool. But then during the day, my favorite part of the river was the sky. And I loved just always being under the sky, and how the clouds were always different.
Mhm.
Every single day they were different. They were never the same. And it was so beautiful. And so I'm curious, I mean, she's not there to speak for herself, but from your perspective watching her, what are the sorts of things that she has reflected to you about what she's experiencing new, and things that maybe she used to experience and love that she's missing?
Yeah, it's a two-edged kind of thing. Here we are right now. She can't communicate with you anymore with eye contact.
Yeah.
We You have no idea how much we all communicate with eye contact. We just do. It's just and all, and then another one that's interesting, but actually it's kind of interesting because when the zombies attack, she'll be the winner. No more social media for Carol.
Yeah.
None. Hardly any. I mean, teeny bit. So she's free. There's not many of us that are free from social media right now. She is free from it. Um, and so that's been an advantage. But you said the hearing. The thing that I've noticed the most is she remembers everything now.
Interesting.
She can't make a list. I mean, she can't write. Well, she can make a list, but she can't read it after she makes it. Uh, but she she'll remember the date and time of something we're doing 3 or 4 days later. Where I totally rely on calendar and going and always looking again. Oh, what time is today? And what she's got. So that's one of the main compensations. Is her memory is awesome. And I wonder about people that before writing and before all of this, I think people had a much better memory.
Yeah, well, we also weren't inundated with so much media. I mean, social media aside, internet aside, we have so much media bombarding us from other places that we never had before. So
So we're listening to audiobooks,
yeah.
but that's like one book at a time, which is good and at a certain pace. And right now we're going through the Dune series,
That's a
the
great.
science fiction, and it's like 6 books or something. And so we do that together. But she actually likes movies because in the theater, because she still can see, but movies are so audio now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
That's really fascinating.
yeah, it's been good. We're having a good time with it.
Good.
I wouldn't say I mean, if we could flip the switch, we would, but it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what in several ways, with both with having experienced death of your loved one, and now dealing with loss of sight of your loved one. I mean, both of those things are really huge, and what I'm hearing across the board is your resilience to be able to deal with these things and to move on, and to be able to, and the way that you're able to move on from grief and change is to appreciate what you have, and to kind of focus on what matters.
Yeah, I will say on number one, I won't say it too long. I almost feel guilty, but they all appreciate what I have. Alyssa, I have so much. It's not, it's ridiculous. And I mean, I've got, my family is local. I've got 3 great nieces and nephews. Nobody's been incarcerated. My mother's right here, great. Still talks about all her sailing adventures. And then my house, I don't have any debt.
That's
I don't. It was one of my first goals in life was to not have any, and I've almost lived debt free the whole time, and so it helped me get ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And then so I'm secure. So it's hard to say. I think it's much harder for someone that's struggling maybe with a lot of student loans or whatever. There's or something that just forces them to go to a job they hate maybe. To say, oh, appreciate what you have. I can understand that. That's not, it's easy for me because I mean, really, I've got.
Thank you for being aware of that. I think that as somebody who has dealt with some of those things and someone who's just like touched on experiencing things like poverty and things like that, it's really, to me, makes all the difference when people who have, or health even, when I deal with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and when people who don't have disabilities or they have their health and they're not appreciative of it, that is to me the worst. Like worse than having poverty or disability is seeing people who do have money or health and not appreciating it. So really, it means a lot to me to know that you appreciate it and that you're aware of that and that you see other people in other situations. Thank you.
Well, keep in mind, and this is kind of cool because what the audience doesn't know is we're really having our first conversation in 20 years or something. And I'm bragging on myself a little, but the last time you saw me, I was below broke.
Yeah.
I was living on like, I think, what was the budget then? Sounds like a lot, but I was living on, my whole life was $300 a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had no hot water, we had no showers, we had no refrigeration.
Right.
And that boat, I don't know if you knew, so that wasn't just that trip. That was my home. I lived on that boat in a harbor in the town where I was then started working. But that, on the other hand, that's where you can say, okay, I saved all this rent money and I kept putting it into other things. But yeah, so your life can change too, is what I'm trying to say. Hopefully it always change. But yeah, it wasn't always this way. But right now it is, and I'm really fortunate because I've got the combination of the health and the financial side kind of taken care of. So
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
I am.
So as a final word, I guess, is there, number one, thank you again for taking time out of your schedule. I'm so glad to reconnect with you and talk with you, and thank you for sharing with my audience.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And finally, is there anything, if you were going to give one piece of advice to someone who's maybe kind of exploring, trying to figure things out, trying to figure out who they are, what is best for them in their lives, is there any piece of advice that you would give someone?
The best thing in your life. Oh man, I guess I wouldn't spend too much time analyzing it. I think what I would say to them is tomorrow, go do something.
I love that.
And
yes.
Go, my phrase for myself, go do now.
Yes.
And the only other thing I have that, if they can listen to this, to say, because I've written it down and I read it every day, is all is before. Now is now. You've got to press on.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Take care. Listen, thanks for inviting me. I don't know. It is hard to talk about what you're doing though without sounding, I don't know, pompous or
You did a great job.
you know, that's a little like I've got some cherry tomatoes going in the backyard right now. See, these are things I'm like, I go to Publix and buy, a big bag of them for like $3, but I got one ripe one in my backyard right now. I was like,